Great. Well, let's get into it. So today's webinar is about AI as your exoskeleton in instructor-led training. AI isn't here to replace instructor-led training providers. It's really here to empower them. So we'll be sharing how AI can boost your ability to create and deliver engaging, scalable training that works. We'll also be giving away a copy of Karl's new book, Action First Learning, Instructional Design Techniques to Engage and Inspire. We'll spin the wheel and announce a winner at the end of this webinar. And now, before I introduce Karl, let me just take a second to introduce Arlo to those who are unfamiliar. In fact, we've got lots of folks out there who are new to Arlo. So jump onto the next slide there, Karl. Arlo is a purpose-built system for anyone running instructor-led training, which is kind of really where this tie-in with AI for us comes in, championing the role of instructors. And we provide the tools to help you create, schedule, sell, and deliver live, self-paced, and blended training, all in one powerful and easy-to-use platform. And jump into the next slide. But we're not just about software. Ultimately, our mission is around helping training providers deliver exceptional learning. So from eliminating admin, millions of hours saved, selling more courses, helping you grow, and we've sold billions through our platform, and providing a seamless experience for learners, we free you up to focus on what matters most. And with our recent launch of AI-powered e-learning, authoring, and delivery, we've opened up entirely new possibilities for designing and delivering modern, interactive, and flexible learning experiences, which brings us to Karl Kapp, who we are very lucky to have with us today. Jump onto the next slide there, Karl. Thank you. So Karl's been in the learning design world for over 27 years. He's a professor of instructional technology and someone who's spent his career helping folks make learning more meaningful, practical, and engaging. He's worked with universities, global businesses, and training providers of all shapes and sizes. We reached out to Karl after seeing his latest book, as we mentioned, Action First Learning. And this is all about helping learners do first. So you're not just sitting and absorbing content, you're applying it. It's full of real examples and explores how to make the most of AI tools in course delivery. So we really want to inspire instructor-led training providers, and Karl felt like the perfect person to help spark new ideas, challenge assumptions, and share practical ways to elevate learning design and delivery without adding complexity. And if today's session hits a technical glitch, no stress. Karl's got a backup career in stand-up comedy, true story. So either way, you're in for a good time today. So Karl, over to you on that note.
Yeah, thank you, Andre. Yeah, I always say, people always say, "Are you funny?" And I say, "Well, have you seen my special on TV?" And they're like, "No." And I'm like, "Yeah, because I wasn't that funny. If I was, I would have a special, right?" So here we are talking about AI learning, and maybe we'll sprinkle some humor in there. But what we want to cover today really are some, I think, important concepts when we think about AI. And one is the concept of AI as an exoskeleton. I really believe that that is a good framework and analogy from which we can view the world of AI, not as a replacement, but as a really helpful augmentation of what we can already do. And in order to do that, we're going to talk about some strategies for integrating AI tools into our stand-up training delivery, no matter what the subject or elements of that may be. And then also think about how we can design our learning experiences with AI. And then finally, one of the things that I really, because it is an exoskeleton, I really want to reinforce is really where we as stand-up trainers who stand there and look virtually at our learners or physically at our learners, think about balancing technological advancements with the human part of it. Like, what do we do that's really makes a difference? I've spent many years of my career speaking in front of folks, training in front of folks, and I really know that that's a really important element and really makes a difference. So you heard a little bit about me and my background. So we'd like to hear a little bit about you. We're trying to run a poll just to get some understanding. So if you could take a moment and rate, your AI adoption in instructor-led training, 0 being, just checking it out or exploring it, all the way up to 5, which is, yeah, we are totally immersed in AI and doing it all the time. The second question is about, have you used them in the past 12 months? Have you used AI tools to create, design or deliver instruction across many courses or not at all. And then we're curious as to see if you're applying or planning on applying AI right now. So you got several choices there. And then finally, what's the biggest hurdle? What's your friction to deeper AI adoption in your training business today? And we didn't put on worried that the T1000 will take over my class. I think we ran out of room for that. But if you do have other, go ahead and put that into the chat and we'll look at that as well. So please, if you do choose other, go ahead and put it into the chat. I'll give you a moment to go ahead and respond to the survey just to get a sense of who's here and what you're thinking about in terms of artificial intelligence.
There's so many ways to apply AI, and we're talking about kind of that creation, the delivery, the post, so really interesting to see where people see those opportunities to support instructor-led training. And also, if you want to expand on any of those challenges, please do so in the chat. It's really interesting to learn kind of what's holding you back. I think what do we got? We've got about 63% completion. We'll just give it another 10 seconds or so, and we'll share the results.
Okay, great. Yeah, no, that sounds good. It's always interesting, I think, you have a preconceived notion about how many people might be using AI or how many people are thinking about using AI. And then every time I see the results, there's always a little bit of a surprise in there of what I thought versus kind of what the folks are responding to. So let's go ahead and see that. So it looks like uh, uh, about 32% of the people are just kind of exploring it. 5% are actually gung ho, could probably be teaching the the
Yeah,
webinar.
share
Uh,
yeah, share your tips.
yeah. Using AI tools in the past 12 months. So it looks like across most courses, so 33% there. Also a few. So skewing definitely toward using it. So I think that's kind of exciting. And then if you see why, where you're applying it, ideation, creating content, personalizing materials, real-time classroom support like chatbots and co-pilots, I think that's awesome. 19% of the people are doing that. We're going to have a sneak peek of that here. And the biggest hurdles really are not enough time is about 6%, but unsure how to best leverage it, 42%. And of course, trust and quality, which is a big issue with AI. There are still, it's not perfect. It still hallucinates. It's still based on, the internet, which has a lot of data that's a little suspect. But it's getting better all the time. But that's definitely all these are valid concerns, but trust and quality is definitely something to consider as you're looking at AI, and that's where the human comes into the loop.
And unsure how
Fantastic.
to best leverage, that's really something we're looking to explore today. So that's interesting to see. All right, stop sharing and let you jump into it.
Good stuff. Yeah. So the concept of AI as an exoskeleton. So one of the things that I want to think about and I want you to think about just for a moment is what does an exoskeleton do? So it's a word that's thrown around a lot since the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I think, but what does an exoskeleton actually do, right? So what if we had one when we were teaching in the classroom? So certainly we could look like this. The students would just be kind of shocked there and we could maybe move around a little bit better, but is that really helping us with instruction? Well, what an exoskeleton does, an actual exoskeleton, is one, it amplifies your strength. So you can lift more, you can lift heavier objects. You can also, because you can lift more with the help of the machinery, it reduces fatigue, supports good posture and movement. There's a lot of this happening in countries like Japan with older populations. The United States is looking into this. It increases your speed. You can run faster, jump higher, do things like that, and basically extends your capabilities. You can do things that you couldn't do otherwise. You can have the strength of an athlete or the speed of maybe not quite as fast as Usain Bolt, but you can get a lot of speed and those types of things. So now let's think about that as an exoskeleton for designing, delivering, and being part of uh, facilitating face-to-face virtual training. So one is can amplify your strength. So what does that mean? Well, it allows you to create more content with less effort. You're able to take content that you've created before, articles you've written, intellectual property, ideas that you have, and amplify those into snippets of instruction that can be used before, during, and after providing instruction. It reduces fatigue. One of the things that I don't like about learning and development is some of the repetitive, tedious tasks that are kind of boring, creating, just one more multiple choice question that has good distractors, that's meaningful, that can take a lot of energy and can be very fatiguing. Or coming up with, okay, one more outline, one more slide, figuring out how all that fits together. Doing that faster, I've sat down and taken way early in my career, I did a lot of work on how long does it take to create 1 hour of e-learning or stand-up instruction. And I know it takes quite some time to do it. AI can help increase that speed, help you perform it better, faster. And then finally, it extends your capability to do things that you weren't able to do before. And to me, that's what's kind of exciting. It allows us to focus on what we're passionate about, our subject, our topic, our learners, and have AI help us with the other elements that can do that. So here's an example
Hey,
of
Jane, welcome.
using AI. I'm using a
I'm
Jane.
presenting to a group of folks, and I'm going to have you be my co-presenter. How does that sound?
That sounds like a lot of fun. I'm definitely up for being your co-presenter. Let me know what you'd like me to do, and I'll do my best to support you and engage with everyone.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about learning and development and how AI can be an exoskeleton for trainers and facilitators and others delivering key training messages.
That sounds like a really exciting topic. I love the idea of AI as an exoskeleton, kind of enhancing and supporting trainers so they can deliver their messages even more effectively. I think people are going to really enjoy hearing about that. Let's do it.
Great. So one of the questions I would have is how could you help me as an exoskeleton, as an AI agent or chatbot, help me present to a group of folks?
Well, I can definitely help by providing real-time information, answering questions from the audience, maybe even giving examples or insights on the spot. And if you need me to role play or jump in with some scenarios, I can do that too. Just let me know what you need and I'll back you up.
Oh, fantastic. Could you even interact with some of the folks who are learning with me? Could you do role plays, for example? Could you role play a certain part?
Absolutely. I can definitely jump into character if you want to do a little scenario or a role play exercise. I can pretend to be a customer, a client, or any character that helps the learners engage and practice those skills. It'll be a fun way to keep everyone involved and learning actively.
So I think it's really interesting on several different levels. And one of the most exciting things for me is that then the learners can take this AI home with them. So if you spend time crafting, for example, a chatbot with some information ideas, you introduce a chatbot in class, you talk about the chatbot answers and responds, and you can give it parameters and elements that keep it more focused. And then the learners can, back at the job or wherever they are, can pull up that same AI and engage it in questions and content even after the instruction. So you can give it a really good instructional base, introduce the AI, have it help you present and role play and do all that kind of stuff, and then go ahead and have it as a nice takeaway. So, I remember when, I spent a lot of time creating workbooks so people could take it away, fill them out, and use those as a reference. But now we can actually have AI be that kind of reference, which is really kind of an interesting ability that we have with AI. So that's one thing. Think of AI as a co-facilitator. But we can also think of other strategies for integrating AI tools into what we're going to do. And when we think about delivering instruction, we can think about three areas that I think make sense. So one is the area of an advanced organizer. So we've all had and sent out, for example, pre-work. And I don't know if your learners are like my learners, but pre-work isn't something that they always do before the session. And sometimes that's frustrating. 90% of the people have done the pre-work, but there's 10% of people that haven't done it, and now they're behind, or I have to cover that percentage when they didn't do it, and now everybody's kind of like, well, why did you have pre-work if you're covering it? So one of the things that AI can do is create pre-work for you and then analyze whether or not the pre-work has been done, give you reports on whether the pre-work has been done, and provide you with information about your audience. So not only can you do, pre-work so the audience can get some content that they need to leverage the experience that you're having live, but also you could sneak in some mini audience analysis questions. How many years have you been in the field? How familiar with of this information are you, right? Some of the same stuff that we did earlier on the back end, then you can analyze it before the learners ever get to your experience, and that allows you to have a better understanding of your learners when they come in. You can do the analysis, you can use AI to do that. So that's really, I think, kind of an important element that needs to be considered as using AI for pre-work. Now, another way to think about using AI is actually in the classroom, mid-session. So one is kind of, I showed you already, you have Jane or whomever, I named it Jane after Jane Goodall, who takes care of the apes. But basically, you could have some AI entity provide learners with not only content, but you could also do something where they can work independently in a structured activity. I know when I used to do back-to-back workshops, it's exhausting, right? You're, as the instructor, you're always on. Um, you say, oh, I'm going to take a 5-minute break, and then people follow you on your 5-minute break. So it's not a 5-minute break. It's you've got questions, so you're always on, always up in front of the group, whether it's virtually or even in the classroom. But one of the things that you could do with AI is you could create a little AI module that people could do in the middle of class. And so you can say, hey, we're going to take a 5-minute break. I want you to go ahead and answer and look at this content and answer the questions in kind of a scenario, and we'll get back and we'll discuss it. And you could do that, without AI. But what AI can do is quickly then analyze the results and give you basically a dashboard where you can then react immediately to what the learners in the class or virtually are doing. So you can say, I see that 90% of you got that first scenario right, but wow, it really dropped in the second scenario. Let's talk about the key differences between the first and second scenario. Or, oh, everybody did well in the first scenario and second scenario, so you guys are getting the content that's excellent. We can move on to the next. So that's a really fun way to do it. It can also give learners a little kind of a break, a mental break. You could do like little cards, you could do other little elements, you could do lots of things that can be helpful. And you can even catch up on somebody that might be behind. So you can give them the modules that can help them catch up, but you could have different learning pathways in the classroom. So I think this is kind of like wild, right? So when you're in the classroom, one of the complaints was, everybody gets content at the same pace, and everybody has to either get it or not get it. But if you are in a workshop or you're presenting content, you can actually have a pre-prepared different level modules. So for those people that really feel that you understand it, take modules 5 and 6. For those people who are maybe struggling to really get this concept and solidify it in your mind, take modules 1 and 2. We're going to take a 10-minute opportunity to do those modules, right? And so now you can actually, in midstream, catch people up to that content. And you might be saying, well, yeah, that's great. That's fantastic, Karl. But you know what? That's a lot of work for me. And previously, it was a lot of work for you, but now it can be done more efficiently. And we're going to show you how you can do that in a little while with this tool. And I think it's really kind of exciting to me because it broadens the possibilities of what we can do. And that, to me, is what's exciting.
Hey, Karl, just want to jump in because we've been
Yeah,
working.
sure. Please do.
We yeah, we launched the AI authoring piece, and we have this delivery, so it kind of allows you to design, quite kind of interesting and advanced blended learning journeys, I guess you could say. And it makes a lot of sense, or it seems a bit more obvious around turning your course outline and your content into pre-reading or quizzes or kind of interactive content before and after the session. But what has become quite interesting is around figuring out how to integrate it into some of these live sessions and things like even kind of individualized workbooks where it's a document that they're doing online or flashcards that they can do as a group or even quizzes, seeing the results and kind of personalizing, some of the learning afterwards. But I think like it starts getting quite specific in terms of the technical setup. How, like for instance, how are they accessing your co-facilitator and actually able to engage with that? Are they pulling out their phones? Are you linking it up to different things? Google, Arlo, I should say, has a learner portal where they can access all their content, single login. So that kind of addresses some of those things, but still I don't know, it feels a little bit challenging. How do you make that a seamless experience, or how have you seen it work, whether it be your co-facilitator using AI or engaging in kind of digital content? I'd love to learn a little bit more around the specifics of getting people kind of crossing, I guess, that line between in class and some of your kind of digital assets.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So one of the ways there's a couple of different ways to think about it as you're presenting as I've had experience. So one thing, like you said, is if they're already familiar with the portal or the entry point into the instruction. So sometimes we'll do pre-work, which is almost isn't required, but it's to get the learner into whatever that learning system happens to be. So we'll say, oh, here's a module. If you're not able to get into the learning system, let us know. Or if you have any trouble, let us know. Please complete the first module. And then, maybe a week before or 2 weeks before, we'll look and say, oh, it looks like Andre didn't get in there. Okay, how come? So you get a personal email walking you through and kind of, so when they come to the class experience, people have already been in that platform, already seen it. And sometimes it's fun to make things that are locked. So you come in and you can see, it's grayed out a little bit and there's a lock over it and you can't get to that content until in the middle of the classroom. And it's one of the things humans get really, we don't like to have things that are locked and we can't get to. So we get very curious about that. So that's an interesting way to do that as well.
And what about the AI?
Okay.
What about the AI chatbot? How are they accessing that
Yeah.
in the room in real time?
Yeah, so I'm a big advocator. So there's lots of different ways that people do training. They're like some people, your phone has to go away, it has to be locked away. I like to go the other direction where I'll use audience response systems or I'll use the chatbot and I'll have a QR code. So I use just free Adobe allows you to create free QR codes. So I'll make a free QR code to the chatbot and then make sure again in the pre-work that people are signed up to ChatGPT, and then in Classroom they just scan the chatbot, which takes it right to the link of the chatbot I created, and then they can go ahead and just take their phone and interact. Sometimes I'll do breakout groups and I'll have like 4 or 5 people break out and I say, okay, bring up Jane and I want you to ask Jane. Jane's going to play the part of a disgruntled customer and I want you to interact with Jane and I want other people to take notes and figure out like how that interaction works. And then after so many minutes, I want you to switch. So that's another way that you can kind of access the AI and have that kind of experience even live in a kind of a classroom setting. If you're using Zoom or something, breakout rooms are wonderful. You just break them into breakout rooms and have it that way. And then I also put out the link for who's, especially for virtual, you could do that. But in the classroom, the QR codes work really well because you just scan it, boom, all of a sudden you're in it and you've got the chatbot. And the other thing, sorry.
No, you go, you go.
Yeah. So the other thing that I do in the classroom as well is I think a lot of times as an instructor, we feel that we have to be in total control and everything has to go like 100% smoothly. And if a class ever happens like that, let me know. Let me
Yeah.
know. But so I say to the learners, like, hey, this is a new thing for me. I haven't done chatbots before, but I think there's a lot of value. So let's work this together and let's get this chatbot functioning and up, and let's interact with the chatbot. And you just do that once, maybe in the beginning of the class, and then if you use chatbot multiple times, people get more and more comfortable with it, and you become more and more comfortable with it. So I think sometimes when you give the learners permission to walk beside you instead of behind you in terms of understanding the technology and getting the technology to do what you want it to do, you can go ahead and do that. Now, I tell the story a lot. I used to um, uh, when laptops first came out, and you used to project a laptop up onto the screen, and you had to, like, a lot of software and cords and everything. Um, it didn't always work. And I would always carry around a stack of transparencies with me. And
Mhm.
one time the software didn't work, and so I pulled out a transparency, put it on top of an overhead projector, and everyone was so in awe that I had a backup plan. They're like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you had a backup plan! Wow, a backup plan!" But any good trainer has a backup plan. So if you have a backup plan also, so if for some reason your chat doesn't work, you don't have reception or whatever, have a backup plan for an exercise or an activity that you can do it that way as well. So it'll make you feel better, and it'll make the learners feel better if something does go wrong. So those are just a few tips of how
I
I'm
really like the
implementing it.
idea of kind of taking the learners with you and saying, look, we're trying some really new stuff here. And especially if you got a live chat bot, you kind of don't know what's going to happen, which is quite exciting for the learners. We've certainly worked with our customers and kind of unlocking some of this thinking. And we've actually set up some of those kind of accessibility limits around when you set up a blended course. You can add a quiz, add flashcards, and they're only available on the day of the live course. But it is around thinking a bit differently and how to integrate that into a live session, and actually thinking about some of the finer details to help it run smoothly. But of course, it is a bit of a learning curve, and we're entering into new space. So appreciate the insights.
Yeah, and when we think about it, I mean, the learners themselves are also curious about AI, and they've heard about it. So sometimes it's an opportunity to introduce them into AI, which they haven't really. Yeah, I've heard about this AI thing, but I've never seen it in action, or how does it work, or so it's your opportunity to not just on your main subject matter, but also help them along a little bit in some of the technology and things that are happening there as well. Um, AI also can be used as a fantastic follow-up. We know from a lot of research that cramming for knowledge or cramming knowledge into somebody's head doesn't always uh, lead to long-term retention and application. And we know that if we drip out instruction called space practice and space retrieval, then the content is going to be more embedded in our memory. So if we look at this chart, is called the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve. So basically it says that after a certain amount of time, we start to forget content. And so here we have, 100% we forget content, but if we do a memory refresher, a quiz question, an article, a quick e-learning course, it triggers our retention and our memory of that information. It goes up. And so if we can space out, in this case it happens to be days, but sometimes you can do weeks as well. But if we space out these little reminders, these little quiz questions, it's going to keep that person's knowledge at a higher level. It's going to keep it top of mind. It's going to allow the learners to go, oh yeah, I remember that. Oh yeah, that's how I need to apply it. Okay, now I need to do that again. And it just reinforces it. So it's great to have as the live session, and you can present really great concrete information, but you get back to work, you get back to your situation, you're busy, things are going on, you have to jump right back into it. But if you can, as an instructor, send out these reminders, you can solidify that instruction and improve the person's performance, which I think is really kind of exciting. So it allows you to extend the life of your instruction beyond the four walls of the classroom. It allows for the knowledge to be a reminder. And it doesn't have to be brand new knowledge, right? It could just be, hey, remember when you're in this situation, you need to do this, this, and that. Ah, yeah, okay. I keep forgetting number 2. So this is a good reminder, right? And it kind of follows along like that. So again, it reinforces knowledge, prevents forgetting, and refreshes the memory. So it definitely boosts you, as we see here in the blue circles, and helps you get back to 100% of the first learning, your memory and retention. So the other thing to think about is designing experiences with AI. So you're like, okay, Dr. Kapp, that's so great, but like, how does this really work? So let me show you how Arlo does it, which I think is kind of interesting. So here we have our, I'm just going to stop this just for a second. Whoops, sorry about that. Right there. Stop it for a second. So we've got 3 ways that we can create a course. And one way is to create a document, an article, and create that into a course. The one way is to have AI create it from scratch. And the next way is you can create it from scratch. You can add your own information. So I'm going to show you how I did that for Action First Learning. And if you look at all 3 of these, we can see that they give us different choices. But the choice I'm going to choose and demonstrate to you today is the choice of document to course. So I have a PDF document that I've created based on Action First Learning. And I'm going to use that, download it, and show you how quickly we can kind of do this. So I'm going to take a document, and you just click on it, you find your document like you would any other document, and here I am, and there I am. And now it's uploading. And once it uploads, the thing that I think is really interesting as it parses the content of that document, this is just a PDF, is it asks me, do I want beginner, intermediate, or advanced? So remember earlier I said you could have different paths. So I would have to create at different times, but I could choose beginners one time, intermediate one time, advanced one time. Then I can pick my audience, my phrase, which categorizes my audience. We'll do instructional designers, but you could do corporate trainers, or you could type your own. I'm going to use English. My document was in English. It assumes that it's in English. And then it asked me for the tone of the course. I kind of like to say, a little bit motivational and persuasive with a tad bit of humor if you can manage it. And as we all know, you have to be careful with humor, but it can be effective. And then how long do you want it to be? Maybe just 5 to 10. That seems to be the most common one. And once I choose this, it's going to say, I'm going to give you a course outline, and it's going to generate the course outline. And the neat thing about this is once it generates that course outline, I'm able to move elements around. So it took the outline of my PDF document, and it says, okay, you have a section in there on reflecting on learning experiences. You have Action First Learning definition. You've got it in action. So here is what I think might make sense for laying out the course. And I might say, yeah, I don't think that makes sense. Now, I want the reflecting down a little bit lower. I want to start maybe with an Action First definition. Maybe I'm going to move 3 ways to ensure Action First Learning up a little bit. And so it gives me this freedom of control, the human in the loop that says, this is good, this isn't good, this is where I want this to be. So it gives me a lot of ability to do that. And then once I have the outline where I want, I go ahead and I hit create. Now what it's going to do is create slides to match the content. And so it's grabbing images, it's putting the content on the screen, and it's allowing me then to look at it. And I can change all of this. So if I don't like what it's providing, I get to make the changes. But notice how, instead of, like, I think of the old ways where I would copy a paragraph in and I would paste it, then I would have to go try to find an image that matches. And that's always a pain. Sometimes it took me longer to find and create images using like Adobe and that kind of thing than it did for me to, I know my content, I'm just not an artist, right? And so that's helpful. And then testing is helpful. It has true false questions. It has multiple selection questions, fill in the blank questions, put things in the right order questions, definition questions, all kinds of questions that I can use to quiz learners, because learners get bored with just multiple choice questions again and again and again. And then this is my course. Now, obviously, as a good instructor, you will go through and you will modify this. You will change it to maybe your own content, definitely your own content, but maybe your own background. So here's background from my book, Action First Learning. So we click on that. So we've got that information there as well. We also then can go ahead and change the beginning of the course. So the beginning of the course also has my content. So now I'm customizing this specifically to me and to what I'm trying to accomplish. And then I can go into each slide and make changes. Here's the accordion. So do I like what says in the accordion? I can check it. If it looks good, I keep it. If it doesn't, I change it. So it gives me complete control, but it's done basically all of the copying and pasting and looking for images for me. That's all done. And then the arranging of the quiz, that's all done. And then I can come in and make those changes. And what it does is it prevents the blank page syndrome. I can't tell you how many times I've sat down at, 9 o'clock at night and, okay, I've got a workshop tomorrow and I got to finish up doing, this, or new information came in, or boy, I really want to incorporate this article that I wrote last week into my instruction, and I'm doing the slides and the PowerPoints and trying to get the right fonts and all that kind of stuff. So it really is, when you think about it, an exoskeleton that saves you a lot of time in copying, pasting, and getting your course just the way you want it. You can now spend time on honing the content, the experiences, the stories, instead of just getting the content into the slides.
We just had a
So,
question
oh, sure.
around yeah, just around, I guess we all see this, right? When we see content and we're like, oh, that's clearly AI generated, and it kind of loses a bit of trust. I think a couple of things to point out there. The most common use case we're seeing with people use this tool is leveraging their own IP. So kind of what Karl showed was dragging and dropping your own kind of expertise. You guys are experts. There is an option to create a course with just a prompt, and you can get pretty advanced with the prompt. So there's probably use cases there to kind of help personalize or make something kind of relevant to your group. You can get a bit creative there. But in terms of your core subject matter, leveraging your course outlines and the information you have, that's the content that goes into these e-learning modules. And then it is really important to go through it and just kind of just check things and focus on just fine tuning the content. Like anything, if you're writing, if you're using AI to kind of speed up the process, you do really need that human eye at the end of the piece as well. It's really a tool, a time-saving tool. So, and I guess what I'm saying is it really shouldn't feel, and it isn't kind of an AI generated quiz. It's generated from your content, and you run through that at the end. One thing that I would point out that I think makes Arlo particularly unique, because there are some other course authoring tools out there, but really our kind of DNA is around automating scheduling and setting up kind of multi-session courses and taking care of all the kind of, I guess, the moving parts around that. So you imagine if you created a 5-session course that might have live online, it might have an in-class session, and it might have pre-reading and some other e-learning modules. When you see all those different e-learning pieces, you can separate those into different modules and save those within Arlo. But then you can schedule it and add those e-learning modules and limits around when they're accessible. Karl, you talked about that. So the pre-reading is actually accessible at a certain time, and it might even have an expiry saying you need to complete this by a certain time. So it gives you the ability in one tool to then go and schedule and automate the comms and have a single login for your users. So you both the creators aren't, your trainers aren't going into different places to create it, but then also your users aren't getting access to excuse me, access to various tools and kind of confused around where the login. It's all on one platform, and you automate all the access and the comms, and it runs really smoothly from there. So I think it's not just about creating content, but it's also about making sure it's delivered at the right time, and it's easy for people to access. It's mobile friendly. They can access on any device. All that kind of stuff. I think is the real additional value add with Arlo, because that's our bread and butter, to be honest.
And I think as we talk through the human-centered teaching approaches, we'll see where the trust can come in, and the where you need to be in the AI, if you will. So one of the ways is obviously hands-on. There's nothing like having an instructor step in a live training session at just the right time and guiding and inspiring the learner. Oh, no, you need to do this. Or, yeah, I see what you're doing. If you just did this, it would be okay, right? We could watch a a video as many times as you want about how to, use a piece of software, but actually using it and having somebody standing literally over your shoulder at telling you, oh, no, if you just go to this field and do this, this can be, oh, okay, I got it. So one of the things that we need to think about is unfortunately, we don't have, we were talking before the webinar about Fred Pryor seminars. I don't know if anybody's familiar with those, but it used to be you would go for like these 2 or 3 day seminars, and they were face to face, and there was all kinds of topics, and they still exist, but there's not as many face to face instructional experiences as there used to be, and that's a shame. And we don't get to get everybody together as much as we'd like. So when we get them together, just giving them content isn't as effective as giving them a chance to do something that's hands-on, that's practice, that allows practice in an environment where you can get correction right away and you get expert correction. So hands-on is a really good way to leverage the in-class experience. Another way to do that is through collaboration. So having people together, building trust and modeling teamwork is fantastic, and it fosters authentic connections. And so when you're thinking about, what's authentic and what's not anymore with this artificial intelligence, I often say, part of the content of this course was facilitated by AI. I still directed the AI. I put in all of the stories of AI, but I use AI a little bit to help me be faster and more efficient. And I think I think it's ethically responsible to say that you used AI to help. I think it's ethically irresponsible if you're presenting to people and they was it AI? Was it not AI? I don't know. Now I don't have their full attention because they're wondering whether or not it was AI. So let people know. I tell the story where this company told me like they had these AI chatbots that were synthetic people, like deep fakes. Like it looked kind of like a person presenting, but not really like a person presenting. And they would keep getting complaints, like something was off about the person. The lips didn't sync with what they were saying. The person didn't look real. They never blinked. They got all kinds of comments. Then at the beginning of the course, they put a warning, like these characters in this course are AI generated, and they got no more comments, right? The people kind of accept, oh, okay, now I get it. It's AI, okay. It's not perfect, it's not great, but now I know why they're off, right? It was just that feeling of why they're off that was a little bit disturbing. But if we have people face to face, collaboration works really well. These conversations, you can have things like, you say something and somebody jumps in and says, hey, yeah, but also think about this, or what about this, or what about that? It's really nice kind of dialogue and really kind of collaboration in that element. Another is discussions. Discussions are a great way to draw on empathy and intuition to help learners feel heard, connect, and it's a way that some people work out the acquisition of content or knowledge, right? They say, well, let me just make sure I understand, and then they give you their understanding of the content. That doesn't work like in an AI and by like, let me see if I understand this. You got it, you didn't get it. It's nice to have another person like smiling or nodding their head or saying, yeah, you got most of it, but there's just one thing that you need to clarify, and so that kind of discussions, deep discussions, are really helpful and can be really powerful in this experience of live training. So adding in discussions is a really good way to do that. And you can leverage like, hey, all of you, saw this content before you came to the session. Let's discuss what you thought about it, or let's discuss that impact, or let's discuss, does this resonate with you, or was it off base? Let's have that kind of discussion. So that can be really helpful as well. Another way that can be helpful is amplifying the human connection through areas of uncertainty. So you might get content and you're like ethical content, maybe you're teaching ethics, or maybe you're teaching, should you do this or should you do that? Well, I don't know. Like I could make an argument that this is a good way to handle it, or I'm uncertain as to the right way to handle it. Well, now this is where another human, an expert, can say, well, guess what? Let me give you some examples of how I was in a similar situation and how I made that decision. Has anybody else in this session had a similar experience, right? So now you're solidifying these areas of uncertainty with examples and stories. And there's some research that shows that the difference between a novice and an expert, I think this is just fascinating. A novice tries to apply an algorithm to solving the problems in their field. So they'll say, oh, well, if you have an employee that is not reporting to work on time, you should do the following. Ask them A, ask them B, you know, and kind of go through that. Experienced people, experts, don't go by algorithms. They look up in their mind similar situations. They said, oh, we have an employee coming in late and they have these kind of, you know, they were a good employee and now they're not, and all that kind of stuff. And they literally kind of go through their file system in their head and find an example that is the closest to this situation and apply lessons from that situation, rather than just being formulaic. And I think that's where you can really help with areas of uncertainty and providing that kind of information, and really helping people go to the next level. And then finally, storytelling. So one of the things that I like to say and like to do is if I have AI generate anything for me, I always go back and put in my own personal story. Oh, this is what happened to me. Oh, this is what I've experienced. Oh, this is what. So even if it's AI generated sentence, which sounds pretty good to me, I'm like, yeah, but I'm not just going to let that stand. I'm going to add a personal anecdote to that particular situation because I think there's a lot of value there. And so that's one way where you can build trust in the content, is by adding yourself back to the content. Make it sound like you, make it your stories, make it your experiences. That's one way to really build that trust factor. And
Hey,
I
Karl,
think that
just
can be really helpful. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, no, this is this section here around kind of what makes instructor-led training unique, or what can you do in-person or virtual training that you can't, through self-paced. And in a broader sense, a lot of these courses are getting a bit democratized, right? With these kind of tools, you can create all these online courses. So on one hand, it is really where you drive that kind of point of difference, the quality training, lived experiences, all the things you talked about, you can only do kind of through instructor-led training. And I think there's always a place for self-paced. And I think the blended experience is really interesting as well. But we've kind of seen in the last, even since COVID, a kind of shift to self-paced. A lot of our customers, we've always kind of lived and breathed instructor-led training, and the value they bring to the learning experience. Ultimately, it's around driving learning outcomes. And so a lot of our customers, with the shift to some of these self-paced, have seen a big drop off in kind of knowledge retention and their ability to apply it. And in there, it doesn't matter what it is, the kind of goal of some of these courses isn't just a tick box exercise. You want them to apply it in the workplace, or in some of the cases, it's first aid, it's kind of life and death stuff. So people feel frustrated when, taking shortcuts. And I think collectively, we've got to really communicate that value and make sure quality instructor-led training is at the forefront. I'm kind of interested to hear from folks, why is their training, why can it only be done through instructor-led training, or what are it's kind of some of the stuff you talked about here. But yeah, really, why is instructor-led training always going to be relevant to some of their subject matter? Because I think that's what we've got to hold on to, and that's their point of difference. And then how you view self-paced, or how you view some of this AI stuff, is around how to, as you said, the exoskeleton, how to support it. People have less time, they have less money, so we can actually provide a course that isn't about sitting there and just consuming a big document. You actually come pre-prepared. You don't have to be in that session for as long, but you're really maximizing the time in class to tell stories, to have the human connection, to learn from each other. So I think this here is a really interesting piece that I'm often coming across with our customers around, what is unique to instructor-led training? Why is it always going to be relevant? And a lot of our customers are seeing it really pick up after kind of some of the fatigue of self-paced, and seeing some of the inefficiencies or ineffectiveness of it. But I think ultimately blended, a bit of a combination, is is where we're going to end up. But I'd like to hear how, what people are passionate about in terms of the role of instructors, the role of that in-person connection, because I think it's really important.
Yeah, it is. So go ahead and put those in the chat, even as I'm still talking. And I always think, there was a great futurist named Daniel Burrus who always said the future is not an or, it's an and. So he goes, we'll have paper and paperless. We'll have flying cars and cars on the ground. We'll have cars and horses, right? We have all of this. So our job, I think, as facilitators of instruction and helping people perform at their highest level is strategically pick and choose what goes where and why. And when we can do that, we add tremendous value because we're saying, okay, this it can be delivered this way, but this needs to be delivered this way. And if we blend the two, we'll have the best output. So I think it's really a great way to think about it and to conceptualize and strategize around all kinds of training. So basically, that's the summary of what we have to talk about. Use AI to amplify what you're doing. It's not replacing what you're doing. It should amplify what you're doing. It should amplify your reach. It should amplify your efficiency. It should help you create enhanced interactivity. It should be continuous support for you so you can learn new things, but it can help you do new things. So maybe you didn't do online modules before as a follow-up after instruction. Now you can do that more easily by adding your content. It avoids the, as I say, the blank page syndrome where like, oh, what do I write? What do I put here? That kind of stuff. And it really can be your strategic partner. You can really use it to leverage what you're thinking about and what you're doing to amplify your impact and to make your learners more effective than ever. So I'm very excited about it. It's something that we, there's lots of, I mean, we could talk a lot about AI and how it works and its positives and negatives. Like any technology has positives and negatives. But if we can leverage it for the positive part, it can really help us be at the top tier of what we're doing in terms of what we're delivering. And it's kind of an exciting time to do that. So we've got some questions and answers.
Keep learners coming back for more, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Deliver impactful training. Yeah, I love it. I've got a couple of questions here for you, Karl. The first one from Elon. How you think about using AI to create on-the-fly content that teaches the learner in their own work environment?
Yeah, wow,
kind of that follow-up
really
piece.
Interesting. Yeah, so how do I feel about it was the question?
How would you approach it?
How would I approach it? So
using AI
one
to
of the
create
things,
on-the-fly content, yeah.
Yeah, so one of the things that I see a lot of these tools able to do is take a document or a URL or images or a slide deck and create instruction. I think if we as developers create this shell of, okay, whenever anybody has a question about, whatever the content might be, maybe closing a sale or something like that, I see us as trainers, designers setting up that parameter. So here's a chatbot that I've set up that knows about this, it knows about this, it knows about company policy, it knows about company procedures, and then the learner can take their document that they want to know more about or want to learn about and drag that to that chatbot and type in a prompt, or actually click on a prompt that already exists, and then it can create instruction for that learner. So that our role then is to create the parameter, the framework under which that can happen, and the learner just says, oh yeah, I just got this document from a client, want to figure out how the best to respond to them. I'm going to drag it into this chatbot that talks about our best response practices, talks about our service-based model, that kind of stuff, put it in there, give me some instruction so I can prepare for a meeting with the client, and boom, it can on demand create that kind of content. It's really kind of exciting, and I think we're going to see more and more tools like that in the future.
I think the chatbot's really interesting. One of our customers, is trying to make a more of a kind of lighter weight course that's more accessible and wanting to create workbooks for each, personalized workbooks for each person that's got to fill it out. And then the instructor can come in and provide feedback at strategic times. So that's the kind of part of that e-learning is actually them having a bit of homework to do and setting up these documents with instructions at the top where they can duplicate and invite the instructor and whatnot. But I wonder, within those documents, suddenly you've got very personalized. If you had the questions like, state your challenges or your goals, all this kind of stuff, then you could use that content in AI to even further personalize it. So I wonder if there's something there, because I think AI has got to have the right content to reference to make it really personalized. So I wonder if there's some interesting stuff you could do there. Hey, conscious that we've only got a couple more minutes. We've got a question from Davor. We have a lot of SOPs in the company, standard operating procedures, which are usually long, boring, factual text, sometimes instructional based, sometimes very general. How would Arlo AI work in such environments to generate interesting online digital or live instructor-based training? So maybe whether you use Arlo AI to create content or something else, but how would you turn that into, how would you approach turning that into something that's a bit more engaging, online, accessible?
Yeah, so one of the things that you could do with there's a couple things you could do with the SOP. One is I could easily see each steps being created into cards, for example, and maybe having to put the cards in the right order. So AI could easily take each step and create it into a card. AI could also give images that you would have to check on, but images to match the SOP. So a lot of times SOPs are written by engineers, so they're very engineering language, first of all. One of the things you could do is you could take it into a system like Arlo or others and say, hey, make this at the 5th grade level, or make this at an easier to understand level. And so it would go through and take the SOP and change it from engineering speak to easier to understand speak. Again, you still have to check it to make sure that it did it correctly, but that's a way. Then you could actually have it create images. So not only am I reading about what I'm supposed to do, but I'm also then seeing what I'm supposed to do. And it won't be long before AI video will actually be able to say, show me this step in the SOP, right? And then you can have video-based SOPs, and that can be very helpful as well.
And I'll just add, dropping that long form content into Arlo's AI authoring, suddenly it's got the content to reference or to create. And then like, Karl showed, you've got those different prompts, and you can actually add your own wording there around kind of make it fun, make it more engaging, make it short. So I think just play around with some of those prompts. And then you've got all these different ways to present that information, matching the two sides, the flashcards, the accordions, the quizzes. So I think there's lots of flexibility there. And if you've got all the information somewhere, then it's around dropping it in and kind of testing out how to make that a bit more engaging, and then kind of thinking about how to feed that to your team, to kind of train them over time, not just hit them with a massive document, but you can kind of break that up and make it a lot more engaging. And it's really accessible as well on your phone, on any device. Yeah, anything else to wrap it up, or should we kind of end it there?
Yeah, I think that's a good place to end it. All I would say is experiment with AI, play with AI, find out what it can and cannot do, and then that will put you in a better position to leverage AI where you need it.
Love it. On that note, thanks so much for everyone joining us. Thanks to Mel in the background, and thank you, Karl, for being with us today and sharing your insights. And yeah, please do jump out, try Arlo as well, and start looking at ways to get creative around using AI to drive more engaging and impactful learning experiences. Have an awesome day, and we'll catch you next time.
Take care, everybody.